Thanks for watching my presentation. I'm Dan Naylor, History 701, Historical Professions. It's November 2025. Topic, the Tuskegee Airmen. We're doing a scholarly survey. The Airmen were a group of 1,000 Black American fighter pilots who fought in World War II in Europe with outstanding success. Just have a glance at the films, the Tuskegee Airmen and Red Tails. They're great, but that is the small story. The large story is how over time, Black people were able to overcome prejudice, at least in certain ways, and in the face of racism and vicious segregation. So our survey begins chronologically in the 1800s. We know that the Buffalo Soldiers were active on the Great Plains. Black soldiers were very active in the Spanish-American War, and something like 370,000 were in the big one, the First World War. My first source is Moy's book, Freedom Flyers. Great book, Oxford Oral History, plenty of detail. My second is the National Parks Service, who have put together an extensive oral history, and also a great technical article in the Journal of the Operations Research Society of America that talks about manpower. Post-World War I, U.S. Armed Forces remained firmly segregated, and specifically as the Army Air Corps developed, blacks were forbidden to fly. So my query would be, the Black folk have paid their due. What's the problem? The problem is, of course, racism and injustice. But there's another problem, and that is theory. The U.S. Armed Forces embraced the 1925 Army War College study, the use of Negro manpower in war. The study called blacks, among other things, a subspecies of the human family. It was non-academic pseudoscience. Now, American universities had already been conducting research since the 1870s. So could they not have asked the universities for help? There was, though, a saving grace to allow Black men to serve as they so desperately wanted to, though national politics were racist, military policy was racist, but the practice of selecting candidates for aircrew positions was not only sound, but scientific. Measured IQ, they had psychological tests. Many of these folks were already pilots, and many were quite highly educated. So my guess is the system was expecting the Black candidates to fail. Instead, the Army Air Corps found itself with an elite unit, and when eventually it was committed to battle, they did extremely well, generally against the German Luftwaffe. Some of that, as we move now to 1945, one would think time to desegregate. Desegregation didn't happen until 1948, and in essence, it really didn't happen because when the Korean War rolled around in 1950-51, the American Army was still heavily segregated. Only severe losses in white personnel allowed the blacks to serve with the whites in Korea. Highlighting areas where there are gaps in the current scholarship, I'd like to know more about the technicians, logistics personnel, and nurses, among other things. I'd like to examine the oral sources to maybe scope out a little bit of the faith and worldview of these fine men. And I'd like to discover why the Tuskegee Bomber Force, the 477th Bombardment Group, never left the United States before the end of the war. Hope you enjoyed the survey.